I was listening to a podcast you did with Gogo as well. I forgot the name of the podcast, but shout out to the work that he's doing. There's
in your footsteps or something.
Something about footsteps. So we'll link that in the show notes as well. But there's a love that comes across, man, in everything you involve yourself in. You know, you don't just do things for the sake of, hey, I just need to feed my pockets.
No. You know, and I think that's the challenge that we're facing as a country, as a society, but it's also even bigger than us. It's a global problem. But I think to start here where we are, so many of us think about ourselves and our immediate needs. And that's not to say our immediate needs are not real. They are, right? However, you're not solving anything. You are just putting a plaster on a wound, but you're not dealing with the wound. You're not healing anything. Yes, you have to put food on the table. But if you can think beyond just when, you know, amazingly, you still get to put food on the table, but you do so much more, right? And I think another problem that we're facing, and it's all in the same line as a people, as a society, is short-termism. You know, we're not thinking 100 years. You know, we're not thinking, you know, there's that expression that you plant a tree whose shade you will never enjoy.
Exactly.
We're not thinking like that. By and large, obviously, I'm generalizing. I'm not speaking for everybody, you know. But for me, it's that, right? It's like, okay, the gifts that I've been given, which are creative thought, drive, you know, but I still go in. Writing. How can I use those to make a difference beyond just feeding myself and my family? And that's how I approach my life. I mean, I always say, everything that I do, I want to come up with solutions that inspire Africans, you know, touch Africans, inspiring harmony, prosperity, and the celebration of this wonderful continent and her eclectic peoples, right? And I sum it up by saying creativity will save us all. You know, so we need ideas and solutions, but not just for ourselves.
I love it, man. And you mentioned something again. I want to go back to something you said in your previous point, where you started small. When we all have these big ideas, and for some reason, because the idea is so grand, we think of, hey, when I have the million or 3 million, 5 million, we don't think of, no, let me just start with like just some sweets nyana kunku,
no,
you know,
definitely.
5 loaves of bread and create nyana cold drink, then I'll start something. You know?
Yeah.
So how's that kind of like shown you? I guess also helped you with like a bit of resilience, right? Across the journey.
You know, it's. I used to have that problem, Linda, of overwhelming myself. By looking at the problem in its entirety. And then there was a period when I went into counseling, and my counselor was more of a life coach. And one of the things we dealt with was precisely that. She was saying to me, why do you deal with problems at a grand scale, right? Just look at, you know, so in fact, I think at some point I needed X amount of money to solve something. And she said to me, why don't you break it down to how much you would need to make a day to get to that amount? So if you're looking at, just going to throw a rough amount, if you're looking at 200,000 a month, that's going to overwhelm you, right? If you're looking at opening a restaurant, that's going to overwhelm you, right? So if you take 200,000 a month, you break it down to daily, you know, my mathematics is non-existent, so I wouldn't know what that figure is, but let's say that figure comes to, what is it?
About 2,000.
So let's say maybe you say, maybe you forget weekends, right? So you say, let's deal with midweek days. So let's say it's 20 days. So it's 10K a month. So you go, a day. So you say, how can I make 10K today? Do you understand already? Even though, yes, making 10K a day is a lot, but your brain can go, okay, I can process making 10K better than I can process making 200K. Right? So for me as well, with this thing is starting Gogo Magic Family Eatery, it was that. Say, okay, I can deal with the food truck, and then we take it from there. But also with contributing and playing a role in our society, it's precisely that, right? Well, you know what? In my little corner, I can do this. You know, because we overwhelm ourselves. You're like, oh man, who am I?
Sure.
You know, what difference can I possibly make? But if you go, you know what? I'm going to write a book. And in this book, I'm going to put some ideas in it.
Sure.
If 3 people buy this book, and out of those 3, 1 absorbs some of these ideas, I've done something. That one person is going to go off. That's my role.
Sure.
That's my contribution.
Sure.
So I think it's important to stop overwhelming ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, no, man. I love that idea because also, I guess we always externalize things.
Yeah.
We thinking, man, when I'm just writing. Now suddenly, man, KG podcast, we're talking about it. Like, people are watching, or, hey, these people. But there's someone who's actually like, hey, this thing is making a huge impact in my life. You know?
That is it.
Man, so let's now move to Ubuntu. I always like bringing this up because there's various layers to it, right?
Yeah,
and certain people will say it's non-existent. But like you saying, that's Ubuntu for me.
Yeah.
Right? And spaces that are culturally appropriate, so to speak.
Yes.
But and then you come here, then there's a sort of something that happens. We lose like some, I don't know, man, a touch of Ubuntu. You know, even though we'll come to a place like this, and that, but we're not neighborly. You said something earlier before we recorded, if you are a single man or you're a single person, people will probably point fingers at you. Hey, something wrong with that man. What's going on there? Right? They don't understand it. But whereas in the suburbs, no one really looks into that. So that neighborliness, So how do you think we can build that, you know, and using your space in that perspective?
Look, you know, it's a tricky one for me because I'm not sitting here saying I have all the answers.
Sure.
I'd be lying if I did say that. However, in terms of just being, you know, interested in each other, you know, for me, it's about that, right? Firstly, it's about being interested in each other, right? Because everyone, funny enough, everyone has an interesting story, right? So, but the problem when is internal first, right? See, we're speaking about Ubuntu, but if when as Umuntu, you don't like yourself, you haven't dealt with who you are, what you are about, what Ubuntu are you going to have? So what's happening is that we are so focused, in my view, we are so focused on external and material and all of these things and chasing achievement. We call it achievement, but chasing status, material, this, that, that we ourselves are empty inside. Right? Which is why we don't have time for the next person. I just want to have this. I want to have that. I want to have this. But if you stopped and you said, you know what? How do I work on myself? Who am I? You know, what am I about? You know, once you start doing that, you will slow down. You know, you breathe. And then you start looking outside. You know, then you'll start seeing other people. But you need to start with yourself. And I mean, I'm going to use a cliche. When they say when your cup is empty, how are you going to fill somebody else's? And I think from Zanzi right now, a lot of us are operating empty cups because we are not seeking to fill them. We color our cups. We put stickers on them, and by stickers I will mean cars, fancy houses, this, that. But the cup is empty. The cup remains empty. All these other things, adornments around the cup, do not fill the cup. And if your cup is empty, what do you have to offer anybody else?
And especially for Magita, man, because status means a lot to us, right?
Look, you know, I yes, there's that, but I mean, the reality is, you know, the forces that shape us as Magita, there are some specific things that are specific to us, but they're shaping everyone, right? I mean, I think women are facing similar challenges, you know? Yeah, I mean, just that those challenges manifest differently. We do different things. I mean, I might get smacked for what I'm about to say now, but Negichala, you know, Banyanaba who get called slave queens, Libashimani by the heist. It's exactly the same human being. It's the same human being, just using different weapons. Do you know what I mean? Okay. It's the same people who want material at whatever cost. It's the same human being, just that they approach it very differently. And you hear me, I say, Banyana Baba Bitwang the slay queen. You know, I don't like to use that kind of language myself, because you don't know someone's reality and how they arrived at that. But what I am saying is that as a society right now, Rimatisen towards wrong. And since Rimatisen towards wrong, we remain empty within ourselves. And so how can you talk to me about Ubuntu when I haven't dealt with Umuntu?
Man. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful, man.